It's the worst of the CBC for September 26, 2019, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. I don't think I need to tell anyone what's on the CBC for half the day today. It's Trump impeachment week. It's probably going to be like this for the next month or so. So we're actually going to go back to standard format of worst covered story, biggest omission, because it fits the bill today. Okay. So there's two things to say here. One, this is Canadian media covering an American story as the primary lead. And the impeachment of the American president, granted, is a big, important story for Canadians. So I'm not going to say don't cover this, but there is the stark contrast into which the depth they're giving these Ukrainian allegations versus the proven SNC Lavalin allegations. So I know the SNC major story of the RCMP obstruction broke the same day as the election, and they covered that. But again, it was one line for 2 days, then disappeared. This is already half an hour of the news cycle. SNC, I know it got this way for a couple days. They had to cover it sort of majorly, but they let it slip. And the only time they mentioned SNC is when they cut to Andrew Scheer talking about the SNC Lavalin scandal. So there's that whole element to it of the disproportionate coverage they give to an American quasi-scandal, right, where nothing's really been proven, versus a Canadian scandal, major corruption scandal, that all the evidence is sort of out there and there is clear obstruction. Now, the other thing here is when we talk about fake news by omission, this is standard CBC today. So I've always said, the biggest type of fake news is omission of facts that they know, because you can't really force them to correct that, right? When they just outright lie, they have to issue corrections. But when you do things like omit certain things to help build a narrative, that's much harder to correct. And this is what's going on today. So they have the testimony over there of Joseph McGuire, the Intelligence Committee hearing, and they're phrasing it like, oh, why did he not send the whistleblower, right? He faced objection from inside the Justice Department and the White House from not bringing the whistleblower came forward. Why wasn't the whistleblower campaign brought forward? They're trying to build this sort of cover-up narrative around all of this, even though everything's been released and declassified at record speed here. And this is, okay, so fake news by omission. Why wasn't the whistleblower brought to Congress right away? Because in order to bring an intelligence complaint to Congress, it has to fit the urgent requirement need. And an urgent requirement need under a whistleblower thing is something that has to do with the intelligence community itself. That's why it has to be brought to Congress. This can be thought of quite simply, right? So if there's information in the NSA or the CIA about corruption or inside the CIA, right, inside the intelligence community itself, that has to be brought to Congress right away, because then the other branches of government have to deal with the intelligence system. But if the intelligence system itself is not corrupted, right, then these whistleblower complaints don't need to be taken to Congress right away. They can be worked out through the intelligence community, brought to a full fruition, right? We're talking, this is a guy with secondhand, this isn't like the whole phone call was like a secondhand knowledge of a call. So this is a bit of broken telephone. This needed to be worked out through the intelligence community a bit before it's brought to Congress. But the CBC and you see CNN and whatever doing this are not just reporting that simple fact of, actually it doesn't meet the requirement because it doesn't have to do with the intelligence community, it has to do with the executive branch. And this doesn't damn or exonerate Trump. This is just how the law is written. And the fact that they're ignoring this to try and make it seem like some grand conspiracy is fake news by omission, right? So that's standard. And of course, they've propagated all the narratives, right? The biased phrasing on all of this and spending disproportionate amount of time on all of this, the sort of holier than Trump bad. So that is the worst covered story of the day. Now, the biggest omission of the day, this is going to be the Andrew Lawton story. So Andrew Lawton is a journalist, accredited journalist for True North Media. He has written articles in major publications. He is way more qualified and he's more qualified and has more of a journalistic record than half the people covering Trudeau's campaign so far. But he has been kicked out of Trudeau's campaign. We talked about it on the last night's show where the campaign actually called the RCMP, and they asked Andrew Lawton why he was following the bus around, because he's a journalist, and that's the Prime Minister's bus, and he's covering it as a journalist. So, ridiculous. Last night, he was physically removed from a public rally. So it's a public rally, right? This is supposed to be open to the public, right? But the Liberals had him removed by police, called the police, and had him physically removed from a public rally. He wouldn't even be able to ask questions, right? Isn't this again, if Trump did this to Jim Acosta, this would be 25 minutes on the news right now on the Canadian News Center. But it happened to a Canadian journalist. It got zero mention on the news. It was not covered, right? So again, I've said all the complaints from the media over Trump's attack on the media, or the right-wing attacks on the media and the sanctity of the media and press freedom, it's all sanctimonious garbage. It's just partisan hackery. And listen, Jim Acosta shouldn't be removed from White House, whatever. We can make that argument. But the fact that you're not doing it, you only do it when the person you don't like does it, right? This is objective partisan hackery on the basis of the media. So the media is not part of the public. It's an arm of the government, and this just proves it. So the fact that got zero mention shows the media doesn't care about press freedom. They care about their team, and their team is the red team. So all in all, what does today get on the Rosemary Barton scale? I'm going to give it a 9 on the Rosemary Barton scale because there's a lot of cheerleading. Like this, just so Hannah Marchand sounded really excited when Justin Trudeau was coming in a canoe. Oh, look, he's on a canoe. So, yeah, this gets a 9 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barton scale for Rosemary Bartonness, which is terrible media coverage. So that was the worst of today's CBC. We will talk to you tomorrow.